Right. Okay, welcome everyone to the PEARC data facing track for this month. Today we'll be doing a PEARC recap, um, a little bit about the Campus Research Computing Consortium if you've never been here. Um, it's a professional community for people involved in research computing and data, and it's got a lot of different things that it does. What you're attending today is part of the People Network, which is like a year-round virtual conference, but there are also various groups that are discussing uh, specific topics or working on some sort of deliverables. So if you're interested more in that, you can go to carc.org for our website. We also have a whole bunch of links in our call document for you to join email lists, join Slack, get involved, all that kind of good stuff. All right, so thank you for coming. But yeah, that's the amount of formal that you'll get today. The rest of it is just open floor for everyone who wants to talk about things.
And I already put in some links to PEARC 25 and the PEARC conference series if folks want to chew on any content there as part of the discussion. The agenda is there, of course, on the PEARC 25 website.
How many folks were able to make it to PEARC?
We're raising hands. I know I saw Bobby there and Deb.
Yep.
So about half of us.
Cool. All right. Nice. Yeah. So one session that I really got a lot out of was one of the workshops. I went to I don't remember how it was actually titled in the program, but it was the Science Gateways workshop, um, which was a lot of fun. It was kind of like just walked us through a visioning exercise for what a science gateway could be, which was really cool. Because we have been getting requests left and right for custom data portals. Um, and this is a structured exercise that is repeatable, and um, it really helps people hone in on things like, okay, what particular value will your idea add over what already exists? So it was just a great, I think I'll probably use the framework myself in talking with other researchers now, um, because that's kind of a lot of how these requests are going is researchers are all excited about an idea, but then when it comes down to details, they haven't really fleshed it out yet. So they need help doing that. Yes, that was the workshop, Amy. Collaborating your way to sustainability. Yep. And kind of the way the title relates to the subject is a lot of what uh, the NSF Science Gateways Community of Excellence does is they think a lot about how to sustain these gateways after after grant funding ends, basically. So this is all about like at the very beginning, how can you think about a way to sustain it that will then inform building it? Um, oh, I should step back a minute. Um, has everyone heard the phrase science gateway?
Probably not.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those nebulous concepts. Um, the way I look at it is a science gateway is an application that um makes some sort of research related task like data management or computation easier and more accessible for more researchers. So data portals are a big one. Data portals are like bringing a bunch of disparate data sources together, but it can also be things like open on demand is kind of considered one of the uh, biggest examples of a science gateway because it makes using a cluster easier.
Yeah, so gateways typically are like application specific, meaning compute task specific. So there are some that are like, there's one that's the neuroscience gateway. And then there's a website. They often are presented as a web format where researchers can upload certain types of data, but then go through kind of standardized analyses, programs, and the computing can happen on the back end on a large RCD resource.
Was familiar with the program from a long time ago, and I've lost track of it now. Is there still a component within Access if somebody wants to do a science gateway that the people can get help?
Right. Yeah.
It's not directly under the Access program anymore, but it still exists. Um,
Well, yeah, there's the idea of a science gateway, which is just a, lowercase, not capitalized
Yeah.
term for these automated systems. The computing may or may not happen on a large system in the back end. Sometimes the computing can happen on like the server that hosts the website, but um, you can set up a science gateway to use computing resources on federally funded systems, perhaps through Access. And there is a Science Gateways Community Institute, SGCI, that provides support to folks who develop science gateways and therefore coordinates with some of the federally funded computing entities that can be that back end computing power.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah. Here's SGCI.
Funding for like need to be in the grant already? Because it's my understanding that you do need some funds to set up a science gateway. So if you were doing that, um, like working on with one of the large systems, you'd already have to have the funding in place to sustain it, or is that is there some application process once you realize you need that?
so if you want to get services from the Science Gateways Institute, um, they provide the whole range of support. So it could be something like you literally write them into the grant to make this gateway. But they also do a certain amount of like free consultation and everything in between.
Mhm.
But like the definition is so broad that like just if you have a web page that kind of has just a list of links that bring together disparate pieces of information, like you can call that a science gateway. It could be that simple.
Yeah, and some gateways, like in the web interface, when your results are done, like even provide default visualizations, again, very specific to the types of data or analysis or simulation that you triggered through the gateway.
You are muted.
How long have I been muted?
I have no idea.
I wouldn't find a hotkey. I was asking if anybody else had attended workshops or tutorials that they wanted to
There were a
comment on.
lot of them this year.
Did you hear that part when I said it the first time, or no?
No.
Okay, sorry. I helped out with a workshop associated with the capabilities model working group of PEARC that I co-chair. And that workshop was on identifying stakeholders to align around a research computing or data strategic action of some sort. You know, thinking about what their priorities are, who they are influenced by, and how to construct messaging that advances a cause that you are seeking support for, whether it's budgetary investment or coordination with other entities on your campus, things like that. I can find the official title and point to materials from that one. But I know at least one person in this audience was in that workshop with me.
Yep, I was in that workshop. It's fascinating to talk with other universities and hear about the different reporting structures and how we have kind of varied stakeholders. I did actually want to, I was having trouble with audio, but bouncing back to the Science Gateway topic a little bit, something that I've been pinged a lot, I would say, in the last year in general, but it's been around data repositories. And I've never considered those a Science Gateway. Previous to this conversation, I always thought about Science Gateways as like citizen science projects, like please take pictures of different watersheds or things like that. But that might be an interesting approach for how to have that conversation with the different researchers. Has anybody had experience with creating repositories, you know, I guess NIH funded repositories or things in that space for data?
I guess if you could clarify your scope of repository first, that'd be great, because there is a very specific term in the libraries that they call a repository.
Oh,
Yeah, specifically for published data.
yeah. This would be for unpublished data. So it's different institutions collecting research data sets of various types. This is terribly vague, I apologize. And right, this is kind of what you get when you're doing the intake on it too. So something will go into a black box and we want a pretty portal in front of the front end of that black box. And so do you believe kind of Science Gateway would be a good definition for what you would say that portal is?
Yeah, I
Okay.
would call it a Science Gateway.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Good to know. Thank you.
But yeah, that's kind of how most of those conversations go. It's like we want everything going in, pretty portal on top.
Yeah. Yeah. But currently, conversation's been around. We'd like to organize it after we put it into the black box and not before we put it into the black box. And so we're haggling about how that is maybe not as practical as we'd hope.
So, hi, I'm Christopher. We have something called at Illinois called the Illinois Data Bank. I'm put a link to it, and it's kind of something that was established to basically get rid of some of the custom backend stuff. So it takes care of all the backend things, and they've got different storage mechanisms on the backends from anywhere from like disk to tape to I think there's some cloud stuff too. But it basically gives you like the interfaces and APIs so that you can design your own front ends if you want to, or you can just kind of go in as a researcher and start searching for the data that you need. So
Yeah, interesting.
Oh, but this is another one where it's published data.
Yeah.
So I think of the Illinois Data Bank as a data repository, right?
That is a
And
great resource. So,
I mean, I had an experience where a researcher who was running a herbarium was digitizing a lot of things and then creating metadata. So they would have like information like an image of a plant. They would have metadata, they would have collection information, and they want to aggregate all that up into something like iDigBio. I'm forgetting what the aggregator there is, but anyways, and we were looking into how to do that because our own data repository didn't have the granularity needed in the metadata, right? And we explored a Science Gateway to be a process for that. It didn't work out because we found out that we needed the funding to do that. And they were trying to do it and they didn't really have a budget to be able to do that. So the way they ended up doing it was they basically put things in storage, and then our IT department gave URLs to certain things that would then, and then the metadata is being aggregated through a resource that was already existing. So they were cobbling together something that way. But in the end, I think our data repository, like I said, wasn't specific enough, right? So sometimes the different types of data need very specific metadata to a company or specific files to a company or something. So here's where I'm kind of like, which one is which? And I guess I also was thinking now with the idea that there's compute, that you can do things with the data that are in this repository, right? So that's another layer of it that I hadn't really thought about before.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very, very nebulous term.
when folks are working with various science gateways, I guess how involved are your export control folks? I guess there's a facet of that I found where we had to engage with them because once it's published to the world, it is exported information. Has that been something folks have had to tackle before?
No, our export control folks usually only get involved if, like, at the beginning of the grant, something is marked as export controlled. So it's
Yeah.
usually identified at the beginning for us.
Yeah, over to Oak Ridge, we've got lots of issues that we have to pay attention to, like everything from CUI. So we're running kind of what you're talking about, but it's behind the scenes. They've got an open data portal that's done by Open Data Soft, and behind the scenes, I'm re-ingesting everything into a hidden Invenio instance so that they can also rework with it. But a lot of times when we've been going through this stuff, what we're finding is that stuff that's actually been released into the public meets the CUI definition of critical infrastructure, and specifically protected energy infrastructure is what we're finding time and time again. And it's really freaking out our attorneys. And it's something that we're beginning to realize we have to get a little more proactive about. So yeah, we are running into export control issues. We run into CUI issues. We run into all sorts of horrible things. But in this particular case, it's a specific project that's attempting to connect to already published data sets that, like I said, we're re-curating them, and we're like, oh my God, this never should have been released to the public. So I can feel that. My suggestion is get people involved earlier.
Yeah, that the concern's been right. Even if we had non-CUI for data sets, it could become it as far as the derivative. And so, yeah, that's been where pre and post award, we've been involving export control a little bit more frequently.
Yeah.
I did want to second the shout out about the data nudge. I like to recommend that to anybody I work with. It's a lot of fun. And they share their materials, which is really nice.
Doing that right now. And if you're a podcast person, there's also the Idea podcast about data management, which is pretty fun.
For the, sorry, I'm just talking, but the for the idle, I guess, Science Gateway conversation, you know, as far as the different methods, we've been kind of coaching people as far as, you know, there's a central model where we, you know, all of your golden eggs come to us, and then there's sort of a federated where we divide that out, and then there's distributed, which is essentially we'll create an HTML page and you can go follow links to places, and good luck. Yeah, have you all had kind of various luck across those different setups? What are your experiences in this group?
Do you mean like the structure of IT support at an institution?
No, I mean, I guess for science gateways, by your kind of definition, so oftentimes if we're designing anything around like a web portal for information, there's a question as to whether our institution wants to accept responsibility for that information, and or if another institution wants to give us their data, and what that means, of course. So either that gets wrapped up in, you know, contract reviews or non-disclosure agreements, or we try to find some other ways to meet a kind of happy balance there. But some of that's been around, you know, we can keep it distributed. That's generally kind of the de facto state, right? You go look up a publication and go contact some folks, right? Or you have sort of the other side of the spectrum where like the NIH has their own repository. You put all the data there, and that entity is responsible for it. The federated ones, I haven't found as many examples of, I guess, successfully working within higher education. So I was wondering if anybody else knew of some. I looked at like the seed bank, frankly, is kind of a federated example, right? There's a multitude of labs. They have a central catalog of information. You can kind of figure out where to get it. I end up referencing interlibrary loans as kind of an example of a more federated model. But has anybody else had a successful model at their institution, or are you familiar with one for federated?
Are you asking if folks have had experience or success with federated models at their institution?
Yes, or they're familiar with one just in using one in general. I've just been having trouble finding one for some reason. I expected it to be more popular.
Just go beyond something like the open storage network. I mean, you're looking like front ends more than.
That open storage network, that could be an example. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Are there any others that I guess pertain to like a discipline or a research area?
So you're not necessarily asking for institution-specific examples, but
So
examples of federated data repositories?
Federated data repositories would be accurate. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
But I think where I've been kind of confused with it is it seems like we can federate cyber infrastructure, right? Like we can have different identity and authorization methods. We've got like Access CI and things like that. But federating the data access itself successfully, I have not seen as many examples of that. I've seen central, right? You pull it all into one place and it's all governed by one entity, so to speak. But I haven't seen that middle option as much.
My
one that-
next, oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, you go first, Alex. Go ahead.
I was going to say my next meeting after this is actually talking about doing this with 6 labs at the grid deployment office. We're in the process of actually trying to build out a federated data catalog that will link through multiple data lakes throughout the DOE complex, and then provide access to people saying, and then also create role-based access controls around everything. It's going to be I mean, this is a rather complex, large project, but I think this is what you're describing. We're in the process of building one.
Okay, yeah. Well, ours is significantly smaller, but we're talking about one that involves like 6 different institutions through a central award to the NIH, and yeah, similar constraints in some
I
way.
think NYU kind of has an analog to it in their health data portal and their data catalog, because I think they're bringing in not just NYU data sets, but they're bringing in other data sets that are of interest. And I think they've built out a pretty good, I don't think it's fully a federated data like what you have in mind, but I think it's kind of close, and it's one that I'm looking at just because they've got really good access controls, metadata around who's allowed access to what and where this data actually sits.
Thank you.
Yeah, another example I'll mention, just because I know it well enough from having worked with the OSG, is the Open Science Data Federation.
Mhm.
And so I guess one of the things that I see that differs across these different federated sources is how they make data available for different purposes. So like with OSDF, for example, it's really purpose built for making data available for open science computing, not just across OSG computing pools like the Open Science Pool that's federally funded, but data there can be made available on clusters like HPC clusters. And there are, protocols you can automate in like a computing task to pull data from the OSDF, from the Open Science Data Federation. So it's really like purpose built for kind of scalable automated computing in a variety of different systems that do that. But it's probably set up a little bit less well for really looking at the metadata or exploring data in place or downloading it to your personal device. It's more like you already know that you need to use this data set for large scale, and that's a place where you can put it. So it can also like replicate data from other repositories if a researcher knows they need to use it for scalable computing, or in many cases, a large research collaboration needs to use it.
Thank you.
You may want to take a look at the Django Globus portal framework. It's kind of basically a scaffolding for you to build a data portal with Globus as a backend. Because Globus does a lot more than transfer now. They've turned their authentication into a full auth service that you can use wherever you want, which is super cool. So right there you've got some identity federation going. But it also has a piece called Globus Search, which is a metadata database. Simply. But the cool thing about this portal is the way they've designed it. The data portal itself is separate from the storage, so it could really be stored anywhere on a Globus endpoint and be in this data portal. And that's kind of the biggest value add for it, which is super cool.
Yeah, great suggestion. Thank you.
But yeah, I think Globus Auth in particular is probably a good place to start. Because like the way Globus does authentication is super cool. It gets a little metaphysical, but it realizes that like digital identities aren't usually one-to-one with a physical identity. It's usually like a one-to-many. And so they take that into account. So you can like link all your credentials together, and Globus knows all these credentials are the same person. So it lets you access things and transfer between them, even though you don't have access with the same credentials to either end. It's really cool stuff. And I would hate to have to like do anything forensic with Globus, but it's cool stuff.
I know we have the high assurance version, which is supposed to, I haven't like sat down and gone through how the auditing works, but we're supposed to have a lot of logs somewhere for forensics. So
Yeah.
but I
Well,
can
the
work with
logs,
the board about it.
yeah, the logs would get really
Yeah.
complicated real fast because of all the abstraction Globus is doing. Because I
Mhm.
think what it's actually doing, like for example, one thing you can do with Globus is share to someone who does not have access to the underlying storage.
Mhm.
So like I could take my storage that's ASU, you need ASU to credentials to access it um, natively, but through Globus, I can share it to you and give you access. And what Globus has to keep track of is um, people logging in through Globus to access that file because on the system itself, it's all accessing it through my user still, I think is how it
Right.
works.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's like a guest collection, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
it gets complicated really fast. But it makes for really cool possibilities.
Mhm.
Um, but the neat part, particularly for regulated data that I think you could do with Globus is since the storage is separate, um, you can basically like incorporate access requests into the portal. But then that gets into like your ownership model, like who's going to be in charge of checking all those access requests. But it's something you can do. So you can at least like put metadata out there that you have like this PHI data set that you did for research. And just so people at least know it exists and how they might get access to it.
Yeah, I feel like we're spending quite a bit of bandwidth just doing sort of one-on-one conversations on what data governance is and like how access control should work, things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, technology is not the hard part. Yeah, kind of the thing that I'm looking for right now is like data portal as a service where researchers could like through some sort of like point and click interface create a data portal so they could customize it with what metadata it needs. So if they're looking for something more specific, they can build it themselves. Cool. Anyone else have topics they want to get to or fun experiences at PEARC?
Or for the folks who didn't attend, what do you want to know from those of us who did?
So I attended a session on 800-171, and that was, I mean, it was very enlightening, but a little scary at the same time. So the amount of actual paperwork involved. So we're looking here, U of I and CSA, trying to get certain systems, certain research systems, 800-171 compliant. And yeah, that was, yeah, like I said, the years-long process it seems to take. And then the different interpretations, and so it was interesting, and I got a lot of good contacts. So that was it was a good session.
I'm looking for that session so I can link to it for folks. Do you remember what day it was?
No.
Was it
It might have been
implementing NIST 800-171 in
Tuesday.
HPC environments?
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah, and one of the ones we were looking at was our open, like, because our open science kind of campus cluster, and then someone else asked for me. I didn't have to ask, which was great. Someone asked, like, they want to take their like more open science cluster at their university, and make it compatible. And some of the folks that had been in the trenches for a long time to get their institutions 800-171 compliant or near compliance or whatever, turned around and looked at him like he was crazy. So, so yeah.
Oh, speaking of which, is anyone familiar with the Citadel project? Which one of the national labs is doing it, I think.
What's your understanding of it?
Well, that's the thing. I only have the elevator pitch, and it blew my brain, and I want to know more. So basically, it's like just-in-time compliance configurations. Yeah, that's exactly what I did.
It's like composable systems or something, but then this is like different data. I don't know. Interesting. You know how you spell that? It's like Citadel or Citadel. How do you?
Yeah, I think just the way you think you would spell it. Oh, hey, it is an Oak Ridge thing.
Oh.
I was gonna say that looks like NCCS to me. I can find out who's running that and bring him in.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Oh, are they kind of
This is
separate?
OLCF. This is yeah. So the best way to I'm bringing this up. The best way to describe the national labs and each national lab in and of itself is a lot more like explaining like Cambridge University or Oxford University. You have this like concept of Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and then we all have little tiny centers that sit in there, right? And I sit in one center, and I used to actually sit in OLCF. I wonder if Veronica is running this. Let me poke around because I'm still very close to OLCF. I actually just had a meeting last week with someone in OLCF. Let me pick around and I'll find out who, and I'll send some information your way.
Yeah. Yeah, because this news story is about they use this Citadel framework, whatever it is, to run some let's see. It's data on from the VA. So I think that's usually got a CUI marking of some sort. But they run it on Summit, which from what I understand is mostly for open science.
Yeah, that would be really, really interesting because VA is held in the KDI, which is a secure enclave, and you need like security clearances to see it. Or not like, but like my understanding is the VA information, and then there's like two VA things, and the two streams can't cross. Like this side of the VA can't see this side of the VA. It's all very like lots of stuff.
Yeah.
So looks OLC, this looks like an OLCF product, but if it is coming, if they are working with VA stuff, then they would have to talk to Ian Gothard. Let me find out, because Ian Gothard happens to be my boss. So let me just.
Nice. Yeah. But yeah, the article says they ran it on Summit. So
Yeah, that's weird. Yeah. Okay.
like if that's generalizable, that would solve a lot of headaches.
I just pinged them. So
Cool.
I did some keyword searching across the program. So I looked for data management and grabbed a couple of sessions. One of those is a paper, so I can go grab the link to
Oh,
the paper.
perfect.
A scalable framework for heterogeneous environmental data management using smart data pipeline. I was not able to attend that presentation myself.
who is the author on that?
It's multiple. Let me see. Oh no, just maybe one. Pratik Pudel from Florida International University. Oh, that's the presenter. There's like a handful of authors. And I just found the paper. Linked in the notes as well.
Oh, cool. Nice.
And I just threw it in the chat.
I got sidetracked too much at PEARC and ended up talking to people instead of going to sessions.
That's also a reasonable way to engage at a conference. There was a poster about shared secure hub for access, reliability, and exchange of data. That's one I hadn't noticed before. And a lot of the posters are on Zenodo, as are increasingly the presentation slides for the papers that chose to make their slides available. Or really just
Yeah.
the presenter.
Yeah. I was part of the planning committee, and we were trying to encourage people to post slides beforehand for accessibility reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the easiest mechanism was Zenodo for that. All right.
Just as an FYI, Deb, the person in the center is actually my boss, Ian. So he's very much involved in Citadel. I'll see if he wants to come and talk to the group about it. Anything.
That would be amazing. I want to learn more.
Okay, I'll let him know.
Cool. But with that, I know it's almost the top of the hour. If there's nothing else, we could go ahead end a little early so we get our bio break between meetings.
Sounds good. Like I said, I took notes of things we discussed, and then also links to posters and papers that were presented that had the words data management in them and seemed to be more than just like the Cambridge Computer Exhibitor Forum. But you can go into the PEARC program, and in that same search bar, look for keywords that you're interested in, browse abstracts, and then from there, if you like Google search the titles, you'll find the papers, or in many cases the poster or even slides.
Does every presentation have a paper associated with it?
No, so there are different categories of presentations, and you can see that under the like call for participation part of the website, that there's the sort of technical program, which is really just papers. And then there are panel sessions, there are workshops and tutorials always on the Monday of PEARC. And so then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are panels, papers, there's a poster session, and BOSS, which are just, experience sharing discussion sessions that are shorter than workshops.
But yeah, so well, there's papers. I would call the papers the primary deliverable, and then they have presentations at the conference. But then posters and visualizations all have an abstract in the proceedings.
Yeah, and like I said, this year they created a PEARC 25 Zenodo. I forget what the right word is, but there's an entity in Zenodo that
Like
is PEARC
library.
25. Thank you, library. And
Citation library.
so people have also uploaded slides from panels and other things that didn't necessarily have papers. So they all have abstracts in the program. Every session has an abstract, including tutorials and workshops. And if there were slides, the authors have the option of posting to Zenodo, but papers and posters are all in the ACM PEARC 25 journal online. And it should all
Interesting
be
use.
open access.
Yeah. Well, thanks for everyone for sharing. And I also hope that people who were able to get to the Ohio State Fair were able to and had a good time and did not eat too many corn dogs.
I managed to escape with no corn dogs, but I got to pet lots of baby animals.
Aw. All right. Well, I'm heading off to my next meeting too. Thanks, Deb. Thanks, Lauren.
Yep.
Thank you.
See you next month, everyone.